Hi, class. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir.
This evening we're going to go over prejudice, power, and discrimination. What is prejudice? Prejudice is pretty much an idea that you have, about a certain ethnic group or, person based on their beliefs, religions, or, just things that, they do that you might not like. Like, if you're a Baltimore Ravens fan, you might say, hey, all Baltimore Ravens fans, they're rowdy, they don't act right, they should go with the Falcons. That's a form of prejudice. But we'll get into this further as we go along with this class. Next slide, please. So what is prejudice? By book, it's defined as an unreasonable negative attitude or feeling towards others because of their membership in a particular group. Everyone has prejudice. It's learned through a socialization process. You're not born with it. It's not bad to be prejudiced. Even little things you might not notice that you're prejudiced about, but it gets bad when you act on your actions. Next slide. Acting out prejudice. One of the few ways you can act out prejudice is disparaging terms. Boy, dumb, blonde, words like that. Avoidance. If for some reason, just for this class purpose only, you don't like Muslims or blacks or Hispanics, you avoid that group of people just because of your prejudice. And then discrimination. When you act on your prejudice and start treating that individual or that group different from everybody else. Next slide. Disparaging terms, we just went over that. Phrases like boy, dumb, blonde, exaggerated situations, ethnic and sexist jokes. Next slide. Avoidance. If feeling associated with the prejudice are intense, it will lead to a prejudiced person to avoid contact with a particular disliked group, just like I mentioned earlier. Next slide. Discrimination. Any action that unlawfully results in unequal treatment based on race, religion, color, national origin, sex, to include gender identity, we'll hit up on that a little bit later, or sexual orientation. Discrimination. It takes place the moment a person acts on his or her prejudice. It's not the same as prejudice, where it's just a feeling or attitude towards someone or a particular group. And can a person be prejudiced but not discriminate? Yeah, of course. We're prejudiced all the time. But like I said, if you don't act on that prejudiceness, it doesn't become discrimination. Next slide, please. Categories of discrimination. Race. You discriminate against somebody based on their race, their hair color, their texture, their facial features. Religion, plain and simple, you don't like their religious beliefs, so you discriminate against them because of that. Color, you discriminate based on the skin of their color. National origin, where they are from, where they're born, what is their ethnic background. Next slide. Sexual orientation, discriminate of the sexual orientation of homosexuality, bisexuality, heterosexuality, or whether such orientation is actual or perceived. They may not be bisexual or homosexual or heterosexual, but if you perceive them as that way, you might show discrimination towards that person. And then sex discrimination, discriminate based on that person's gender, what they are biologically and how they think they feel, they are, as they identify in their minds. Next slide. And not much more for the military, but more on the civilian side. If you're out in the civilian sector in a job, you can be discriminated on based on your disability and your age. I don't know if anybody here has experience in the civilian workforce with, resumes and interviews, but if they ask you about your disability or your age, technically they're not supposed to ask you any questions about your age during a working interview. Next slide. Prejudice, power, and discrimination. So power is at the core of discrimination. Without power, you can't really effectively discriminate. You can have prejudice, but without power, you can't discriminate. So for example, myself, Sean Harris, I'm EO at 55th, but I'm also the retention NCO. If I'm prejudiced against Sean Sale, it's just something about him that I don't like. and he comes up in his re-enlistment window, since I'm in a powerful position as the retention NCO, it's up to me to do his paperwork to re-enlist and stay in the Army. But if I don't do it, if I don't go to Soncel and say, hey Soncel, you're 15 months out from your re-enlistment, you can re-enlist, he won't know. I wait till, he's 90 days out from his ETS, and then it's too late for him to re-enlist. I have that power to do that, so yes, I can discriminate. I show my prejudice, I act on it, and now I'm discriminating against Soncel. Now, if I'm just a regular soldier and I'm prejudiced towards Maldonado, I don't really have no power over him because I'm not in a work position where I can hinder his career from progressing. Next slide. Strategies that you can use to combat prejudice, power discrimination, of course, awareness. Be aware of your surroundings, be aware of the people around you, pay attention to the command climate survey and results. When the commander briefs members on those results, you kind of see where this workplace falls in line. Education, EO training, like we're doing right now, quick, brief, to the point, ethnic observances, learn about other ethnic backgrounds, other religions, keep an open mind. Policies, view any EO posted policies, promote diversity, which the Army is pretty good at in promoting diversity. We have people from all over the world in uniform serving this great country. Analyze yourself. What are your behaviors when you're out and about? Do you recognize when when that little bit of prejudiceness creeps up on you? Do you act on it, or do you, let it go slide? Example, don't just talk about, EO, or, oh, I'm not racist, or everybody's equal. Walk the walk. Don't just talk about it, be about it. And involve your leadership. Next slide. Other than that, that's all I have for you guys. Thank you for your time.